Hey, everybody. Aaron Zamzow here with the Better Every Shift podcast. Thanks for joining. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting the mission. Again, I am Aaron Zamzow. That is Janelle Fosquet. I like to call her Agent J, Producer J. And we're here just to help you get better every shift. We're here to talk about a lot of things in the fire service, a lot of things outside of the fire service. We're here to give you some great facts about the fire service. We are here to motivate you a little bit, maybe to get yourself to be better every shift. One of the things I think is really cool that we've been doing is, we talked about trying to give, fun facts and just some things that like, basically what happens is I go to Fire Rescue One and I look at articles, and I do this to make myself better. And I've really focused on this the last, obviously, more in the last 4 to 5 months, but there's so much stuff on there, and there's so much stuff that I've actually relayed on to other people. I'll give you an example. One thing I did not know, Janelle, did you know this? Coolio was a firefighter. He passed away, but he talks about his journey and how firefighting really helped him kind of get on the right path. So without firefighting, without the fire service, there would be no Gangsta's Paradise. I did not know that. So there's a fun fact for you. So if you listen to the rest of this podcast, you take nothing away from it other than Coolio as a firefighter, and then tell your crew, right? And the other part about the fire service and what I've been reading a lot and again, trying to make myself better is we are a data-driven kind of, I guess, service now. We're a data-driven society, and that is transferred into the fire service. And when you talk about data, you obviously have to talk about science. And to me, I'm excited about that because you can justify decisions. You can justify, everything from budget to health to wellness and everything. And so our guest today is a scientist, is probably one of the best scientists we have working with us in the fire service. And I'm excited to bring her on. It's Dr. Sara Jahnke, and we will bring her on very, very shortly. But I do have to say this. Janelle, do you know where I store all my dad jokes? Speaking of.
Oh goodness. I don't.
I store all my dad jokes in a database.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Gotcha. I see where this is going today.
Speaking of data and science.
Yeah.
Off camera, Dr. Jahnke is laughing at that one. She's probably the only one. And speaking of her, she actually just spoke at the U.S. Fire Administrators Summit on Fire Prevention and Control. They talked about the state of science. It was hosted by the USFA, FEMA, National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. It had the president speak at it. Basically, the who's who in the fire service was speaking at this event, and Dr. Jahnke was there talking about the fire service and women's health. There were also conversations about the issues we have with, fires themselves burning hotter, how that's leading to possibly more fatalities, and then also leading to more health issues. And so, let's bring her in here and talk a little bit about that, and also about all the different things that she has been involved with that have really transferred to the way that we are making some positive changes in health and wellness. And so let's welcome Dr. Jahnke. There she is.
I did laugh, but I also eye rolled a little bit.
I think it's kind of hard not to eye roll.
Well, yeah.
Sorry, Aaron.
And I just want to read a little bit of a bio. Just if you don't know who Dr. Jahnke is, just Google, and you should. I do want to say, if you've been living under a rock, but she is sometimes behind the scenes, and that's why we wanted to bring her on, is because she's been working so hard for us. She's the senior scientist for the Center for Fire Rescue and EMS Health Research at the National Development and Research Institutes. She's served as a principal investigator or co-investigator on several studies funded by Department of Homeland Security, National Institutes of Health, American Heart Association. She's an active member of Safety, Health, and Survival with IFC. You're called regularly to be a consultant. I email you frequently to get your input and intake or input on a lot of stuff. Well, welcome. Thank you for being here. And then and you also have a brand new venture, a brand new I guess organization that you're working with that's really been taken off, and I've actually taken note of. We were talking off camera about, and I don't know if you want to kind of start with that. What you've been doing?
I like to call it a brand new adventure.
Okay,
it's really interesting. It's kind of, they joke that it's like my fourth child, but this is like a labor of love from all these years of work that has kind of come together. We started like a decade ago. A whole bunch of the folks who were funded by FEMA tried to create an organization that was like a network or an organization for the scientists. And we spent 3 sessions trying to name it. And so we gave up on it because it was just, you can imagine.
We can relate with trying to name this podcast.
Oh
honestly.
my God, it's so difficult. And then, so we finally named the organization. Our official name is the Science to the Station, a Health and Wellness Alliance, for short, the Science Alliance. And people have given me pushback on that. They're like, oh, that's too, I'm like, we just had to pick something. So this is it. We have merch, so we're going with it. But it's basically like, oh my God, we have some really cool merch. We've got like a conference we're doing in January. It has like a t-shirt with like the speakers on the back. It's like a 1980s concert tee. Like it's
I love it.
Yeah, no, it's called Nerd Stock, and so it has like the Nerd Stock logo, and then it has like a little bird like Woodstock did, but the bird's wearing nerd glasses. Like it's just like
Genius.
That's my favorite part of the whole thing.
I love it.
That's not me. We have Jeannie as our graphic designer, and she's brilliant. She comes to me and she's like, "What about this?" And I'm like, "I think I love you." So, yeah, no. So it's real. Website.
You're gonna have it like 20 years from now, just like your Def Leppard concert, right? Like you're gonna pull it out and be like, back, you know?
It's gonna be like buy more than one because you're gonna wear it out. Because we also have a T-shirt that she designed, and it has Einstein space, but he's wearing a fire helmet, and it has like our little, it's brilliant. Yeah, I hopefully we'll have it ready for the next email. But basically it's an organization focused on all the people that are interested in health and wellness of firefighters and the fire service. So it's like everything from pure fitness trainers to the scientists. Like we've brought on, like, as the founding members, or legacy members, all the core folks that are doing firefighter health and wellness. Jeff Burgess and Denise Smith, Kenny Fint, like the big folks. And with the idea that also, like, as we build in more researchers and new researchers are coming to this area, we can have this collaborative conversation about what's been done. And so we're not reinventing the wheel. So we're always pushing stuff a step further. But we also have like a lot of the occupational medicine physicians that are working with the fire service. There's not a network of those that's any type of like formal place, so it's kind of, we need to have all those folks talking to each other.
Yeah.
We have a lot of health and
Can
wellness.
I suggest one too? I think physical therapists also need to be included in that, because there is a huge disconnect in return to work policy and return to work and injury prevention, right? Like, so someone gets injured, how are they ready to come back, right? And I've had some great, I got some people for you. So
yes. And that's honestly, like, that's how this is being built, is as we talk about it, people are like, oh, we should also do it. And I'm like, yes. Okay. And then I give you assignments, and then you have to help us do it.
Right.
So you have to be careful when you open your mouth, but I think, like, that's the kind of conversations that we need to have. Like, it shouldn't be that if you're in Missouri, that it's completely different than you're in Utah, because there's data-driven decisions that you can make about that, right? So we're trying to just push the research, but push it out in a way that, like, and I mentioned this before we went live, like, people say, like, oh, I'm not a scientist, I'm just a firefighter. And I'm like, I'm not a firefighter, I'm just a scientist. Like,
right.
I think I'm pretty good at my job. But I couldn't save someone who coded in front of me, other than what I learned in CPR class. So I could maybe, but
you can now, after we reviewed it. Behind the scenes, right? Like, just start compressing. Keep that.
So, but there was like that song you were supposed to do, and I can't remember what the song was. So I'd screw up the beat.
Staying alive, yeah.
I had to Google who Coolio was. I told you I'm a black.
Did you just Google Coolio of all gangsters?
I don't know. I'm a
Fantastic Voyage.
Yeah.
And then you see that, and I kind of know the song. And I'm like, I'll have to listen to that, and then I'm pop culture black hole. But
anyway. But what I do love about you, and we did talk about this, and why I like the whole breadth of this entire podcast is, I mean, obviously, how can we use the science to be better every shift? But one of the things that you and I always gravitate towards each other, because we might talk a little tequila when we're at these conferences. We might talk about fitness, we talk about wellness, and we talk about application. But you can talk to the scientists, and you can do the cosine variables and the variability, all that stuff. You look at the data, but then you come and talk to me, and I go, oh yeah. So you look at the data and you go, Zam, don't wear your gear, or wear your gear in this because you're breathing this and you're killing yourself. Okay. Right. Like, you can talk to both parties. And that's why I love always talking to you, and why I appreciate what you've been doing. And that's kind of what the Science Alliance is about, right? Like, let's get all the parties together. And, because we were talking about, one of the ways we can use the science to be better every shift is look at that middle ground, right? You were talking about that middle ground a little bit.
Right. Well, because like, if I were to give you a data-driven advice on your health, it would be, don't be a firefighter.
We'll take that out.
I don't. Well, and that's the thing is, like, we know that it's bad for your health. And so then that there are a lot of things that pull for poor health behaviors. I mean, all those things, the shift schedules, and the right to sleep. Like, at the end of the day, someone has to do the job, right? Someone has to go, like, pick grandma up off the floor at 2 a.m. when she falls. And so how can we do the best, what's the best version of what you could do, but then what's the next best version? And if you can't do that, then what's the, like, I sometimes think that we let the good be the enemy of the perfect, be the enemy of the good. Like, we can tell you, data would say, do this, this, and this. But the data, I mean, best case scenario would be that you don't go to fires, or that there aren't fires in the first place. But
right,
we know
that's not going to happen. Yeah.
Right. So then what can you do? And that's where, and I do feel, I appreciate the compliment, because I do think that one of the things that I strive to do is to be able to communicate about it. But I also think, like, there's a limit to what I can communicate about, because I'm not a firefighter.
Yeah.
I can give you the data says this about, we know this about miscarriage. We know this about preterm labor. But what does that mean policy wise? Like, I can tell you what I think it should mean, but at the department level, what's realistic? And there are a lot of competing variables on that. And Frank Lieb he's chief of training in New York. And he's always like,
Frank. Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that guy. I love that guy, because he's like, you give me the data and I'll tell you what that means in practice.
We can do.
He's like, you don't have to tell me what to do on a fire truck. And I'm like, I have fucking clue what to do on a fire truck.
Right. Well, and then part of that is too, like, there's this range, right? So the data tells us this is where we should be, way up here. And this is great, because our theme is, don't wait to be way up here on this side. Our theme is, figure out where you are, and then figure out how you can improve just that little bit. And maybe it's improve your policy by starting a policy, and then improve it the next year, or every time you evaluate it, look at the data and let that determine your decision now based off of your organization, right? Because New York can maybe do something a little bit different than Madison, than Pawtucket can, right? Like,
totally.
But that's really, I think, you're part of your message too, which is why it aligns so much with what we're trying to do, is use the data. And do you think sometimes too, we look at, and we had talked about NFPA, right? Like, NFPA sometimes this is the extreme side. This is where we want it. And sometimes that makes us just not even start, right?
Yeah. And I think you have to give early, easy wins. I mean, when I present with Frank, he says, and they say, if you're going to go home and do anything to start your cancer prevention program, what would you suggest? And he's like, don't try to do everything. He said, pick one or two things that are easy, achievable, implement those, and then move to the next. I mean, change of culture does not happen overnight, but we've seen changes in the fire service. If you look at, one of my favorite examples is cigarette use. So
Yeah.
if you look at cigarette use today in the fire service, it's lower than the military. It's lower than the general population, significantly lower. Now, if you look at, there weren't studies like 20 years ago on firefighters and cigarette use specifically, but you saw that as a covariate in studies. So we can look at that. And we know qualitatively it was really high. You go back and look at what it was 20 years ago, it was higher than the general population. It was higher than the military. Like it was like actually off the charts.
Right. Off the charts. Yeah.
I remember. And that,
well, it's part of our culture too. Like, oh, after a fire, you have a heater, right?
It's like, that's one of like the most addictive substances. Like people have said it's harder to quit cigarettes than heroin because it's so much a part of
Ask my parents. Yep. My parents, closest divorce they ever came.
We are now lower than the general population. Like we in the fire service have achieved what Healthy People 2020 was shooting for and totally missed. So awesome. I take that and I'm like, it can happen, but that did not happen overnight. But it was just a massive success. And it's a story of what positive peer pressure, when you can get everyone on board about like, this is what it means to be a firefighter. 10 years ago, when I went to my first meeting with Rich Duffy at the union, and he scared the shit out of me, FYI. Can I cuss on this? Sorry. I should clarify.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try and keep it to a minimum. We get to the section of the survey, he's looking over all our stuff. We get to the section on the survey and about tobacco. And he's like, we will be the first tobacco-free union. And I'm like, that's a bold statement. But as we did qualitative work, we would be at firehouses and we would sit around and we talk about like, okay, let's talk about all health and wellness issues. And when we got to the tobacco section, so tell us about smoking. And if there was a smoker in the room, everyone would be like, so this asshole is still smoking. And they were totally ragging on whoever it was. And I'm like, that is culture change.
That is. We're very good. Once you get more people on board, we're very good at using that. Like seatbelt uses. That's another thing that's right. I think has really drastically improved in the fire service. And I'm glad that you said that because, sometimes when you, especially if you're someone who wants to be more healthy, right? Like I think that's one takeaway already from this podcast is yes, it can happen. Look, here's an example, even now, I think we are getting better at wearing our SCBAs and our PPE in overhaul situations. Yeah. Decon in certain situations, not so good, but right. Like we are making some positive change and, and with that, like when we reached out to you, we said, hey, better every shift. Like when you look at that, what do you originally think? Right. Cause all this research behind and you're just saying, okay, where do we start with that? Right.
Yeah.
Like,
I think there's twofold to that question. So where does the individual start and where do the organizations start? And I think individually people have to look at where they're at and go, okay, what can I do a little bit better? I love the 1%, the 1% better. And there are a lot of groups that talk about that, 1% better. Yep. Chris Nikic, are you familiar with who that is?
Not necessarily.
Oh God. So Google his ESPY award speech.
Okay.
I might cry. I do every freaking
What's the one more time with the name? Chris
Nikic, Nikic. So he is the first person with Down syndrome to compete and finish an Ironman. Okay. So he started training a few years ago. And this touches my heart because as a parent of a child with Down syndrome, like everyone in our community was like watching him cross the finish line. My husband's watching it, standing in the living room, bawling. And my son comes up and puts his hand on him and pats his back. Like people with Down syndrome they struggle with like low muscle tone and low, like you see high rates of obesity because they don't have that, like the low muscle tone doesn't give them the, like your full stop eating. And there are all these behavioral issues and so all this stuff, like it's really, it's hard. It's a challenge. So to have someone be able to do that, and that was his thing. He's like, I just try to get 1% better every day. Like it doesn't happen. You don't go from, he talks about when he was 18, he was obese. He's like, you don't go from that to running an Iron, I said the only person to run an Ironman. My husband's like, you mean the first with Down syndrome? I'm like, shit, now my 6-year-old's training for an Ironman.
Yeah, but, right. Well, that's okay though, right? That's good.
It can happen. And that's what I'm like, if Chris Nikic can do that, like any firefighter in engine one can do that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's individual. So you got to look at like, what could I be doing a little bit better? Organizationally, I think it's the same, but on a big picture. I think you got to look at priorities. You got to go, okay, we want to, and I think you have to make a holistic approach. Like, you can't just be, we're going to do cancer prevention, because cancer prevention is also addressing alcohol and behavioral health, and
fitness, nutrition,
nutrition,
mental health, stress management.
And if you look at how much your risk increases from cancer, being a firefighter, you're around 10 to 14%, depending on the study. If you look at, like, if you're a binge drinker, 3.5 drinks or more at a time, and that's on average when firefighters drink, they drink 3.5. I mean, some of these rates are like over a 200% increase. So, like, it's not, we know fitness, it can do anywhere between 10 to 25% decrease in cancer risk.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think the great point there was, individually, you can always do something to make yourself better. And don't wait sometimes. And I've had that conversation. Don't wait for the organization. Because the organization doesn't put that Snickers bar to your mouth. The organization doesn't, whether they support you or not, you still have, outside of the organization that you can use to get better every day. And, some of our guests even say, hey, take 10 minutes to read. And I think every day, I believe that. I think you also need to take 20 minutes on your body, whether that's recovery or actual, like, high intensity fitness. But you're right. Individually, we can do something. And then organizationally, if I hear you right, like, you may not get the policy right, but let's start having that conversation, at least addressing that. But don't just do a checkbox. Think of it more long-term, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Perfect.
and too, the individual, but then I also think that can infect the crew. Like, if you set the expectation with yourself and people start seeing you change, or if the whole crew has a conversation like, hey, let's do this. Let's all try to do this. I mean, some of the best, one of the studies we did early on, we had someone, it was a cohort study. So we were like doing weights and measurements and all that kind of stuff. And this one guy was like, he's trying to get on the scale, and he's like, I feel awful about where I'm at. He's like, I feel like I'm putting everyone at risk. I feel like and his captain comes up, puts his hand on his shoulder, and he's like, you know what? We can help. We'll get you there. We will all do this together. And it was cool because we went back, like, I think that one was a 12-month follow-up. And he really had made a lot of prep, because it was like, this is what we do. And we have to leverage that. We have to leverage that positive peer support. Because, man, once you get a crew that's excited about something, regardless of what it is,
Yeah. And I believe that most of us in the fire service, I'm a huge majority, do want to improve every day, do want to improve our health, do want to work out, do actually want to, eat very healthy. I think in the past, like people thought, well, through concentration, I can raise and lower my cholesterol at will. You're like, no, you can't do that. You have to actually work, right? Like, but together we can do that. And you do that by changing that culture, which is what you're saying. Yeah. Like and sometimes it takes one, and I'm very fortunate. I've been, be able to speak with you and meet with you and all these other people. That's I have these conversations. People like, what do I do? My crew's not working out with me. Just keep doing it yourself. Right? First they will laugh, then they will follow. So, well, that's, I mean, right? Like, and that's what you speak and preach all the time. And you were one of the first researchers too. So I think there's so many different avenues where that portrays, that can really relay onto what you're doing. And so with that, like we right now, we've given our listeners really great, usable, better every shift. Like, okay, I can take that and run with it. So thank you for that. But we also do this other thing on I'm calling this a show. It's not a podcast. It's just a show. We're conversation. I don't know. We got to figure out what it is. We do a hot seat. So like we get to throw you and make you more like, you're super smart. You do all this research. You just spoke in front of the president, right? But now we're going to bring you down to our level, right? Like, so we're going to ask you like questions, and we kind of draw these out out of a box. Sometimes our listeners ask them. So ready? Here's a good one to start with. Hot seat question number 1. You ready for these?
I'm ready. I'm a little nervous, but okay. Don't ask me pop culture questions.
Oh my God, but we get into it. So I'll give you one about what you're comfortable with.
Okay.
What have you not studied that you want to study?
Oh my God, the list is so long. How long do I have to answer the question?
Well, you're hot seats, so they're kind of faster. But
Oh, shit.
you know
Okay.
what? I just like watching you go. Yeah.
So next things like what do I have ahead? I have ahead. We need to look at reproductive health in terms of child health outcomes. That I think there's some early data that's concerning about that. We need to do more on behavioral health. We need to do more on, and in terms of like what actually does work and how are people implementing things. We need to do work on mental health for leaders in the fire service. How do we best serve those? And how do we implement behavioral health screenings most effectively that actually gives appropriate and useful feedback, and a new measure of post-traumatic stress. And I want to call it something else and make a new.
You want to call it different than post-traumatic stress?
I just don't think it captures. I think all of our measures on that are not effective in capturing what needs to be captured. I think that's based on the model of like either child abuse or being exposed to like one traumatic incident, and that's just not what we see in the fire service. So those are
really a lot of that stuff is now we need to look and have to have data on our data, whether we're using it correctly, right? Like that's 100%. The biggest thing. Okay, yeah. That awesome. So see, these aren't so bad. All right, here's a tough one for you. What's your favorite TV show?
Now I'm trying to remember the TV shows. I watched Law and Order SVU a lot. My favorite TV shows, I mean, I watch Blue Bloods a lot too. I'm a big fan of that show. Okay. I don't know if it's my favorite. Well, shit, that's a really hard question.
See, right? Like these are things, and just so everybody knows, off screen, what we were talking about is like Dr. Jahnke can remember the data and the stats of all these different health issues, but she can't remember if she wrote an article or not. And this has happened to me. I've been writing now. I'm very fortunate. And I Googled an article once and I started reading it. I'm like, wait a minute, I think I wrote this, and I recognized it. What was your story about that?
Yeah, no, I did that I do military tobacco stuff, and I was reading an article and I got like to the end of it. And I'm like, this is right on point with my views on this. And I turned to the front page and I was the author. Like an idiot. I just am not like, my memory is not good for that. But you asked me, I'm like, I'm trying to think through like what I've even seen on Netflix, and I have to Google stuff like who is Coolio. I'm just like I'm a black hole.
But you know what, Doctor? Keep those brain cells helping us in the fire service, please, because we need people.
That's what it is.
Yes.
It's embarrassing my family, but
I got two more for you. You ready? These are going to be tough ones too, but so far so good. And I think I might know the answer to this. What's the most interesting piece of data you've learned during your time doing fire service research?
Oh, the most interesting. Part of my problem is that I find it all interesting. I think the most startling I saw was the data that we did on miscarriage. We found a doubling of risk for miscarriage for career versus volunteer, for career versus general population. That wasn't that I was expecting. It was like 46% higher for volunteers.
Oh my god!
So I don't know that's like my favorite piece, but it was the most one that I was like, I think I screwed that up. Rerun that, and it was everyone looked at it. And that was the one that I went, oh!
Like I thought you'd say the top 5 foods. Remember you sent me that slide on the
top. Yeah. No, I do like the top 5 foods.
Which was alcohol was like number 2, right?
It was number 2. But I was just proud that it wasn't number 1.
No.
And I think processed meats. Like
are we classifying alcohol as a food?
Well, so it was food and drink. It was
drink, yeah. So it was like the top 5 food or drink in a firefighter's diet. It was like processed meats was 1, and then alcohol was number 2.
Number 2.
Wow.
Like and salty snacks was number 3.
Salty snacks was like, potatoes were in there. I think potatoes like 4 or 5.
4, but it was almost all French fries.
Yeah. So that's what I thought you would say, but the data on the miscarriage was pretty obvious. I think it was one that you're like, oh my God, this is obvious, and is it right? And you found out it was. Yeah. So.
And then the volunteer one, though, blew my mind. But talking about classifying alcohol as food, on average, when firefighters drink, it's the caloric equivalent of a Big Mac.
Oh.
So you have to you got to figure that in when we look at all the other issues going on. And then how everything else.
Well, and we can relate this, and this I think we're going to have you on another show, because we can relate. We can just talk about health and wellness, and this was more of a big picture, giving us some stuff that will make us better by looking at data. One more hot seat question I have for you. What's this is my favorite question to ask any of our guests. What's your walk up song? So like you got to walk up to the plate, or you. I asked you this one in a conference. I think we started talking about this. That's why you're probably laughing. But
so this happens to come up a lot. So Frank Lieb put a video of me walking up and the scientific team walking up on stage at the presidential summit She Blinded Me with Science.
That's awesome.
But my sister also has a playlist of walk-up songs for her sisters, which I don't know why she would do that. And she has my walk-up song is Doja Cat's Boss Bitch, but I think it's because she taught it to my 2-year-old.
Okay.
I'm a bitch. And I'm like, you're 2, and that's not appropriate. School says so.
Well, right.
I think I have a walk up and a walk down.
There you go.
What's your walk-up song?
Who, for me?
Yeah.
Oh, it just depends on what we're doing. I got a ton of them. There's you're gonna have like the chicken song. I mean, it just depends. Like I have a lot. Like, do you want crowd in it? Is it something I want to get in my head?
Imagine you're gonna throw out the first pitch at a game. Yeah. Let's say that.
I'm more about pop culture. I love getting people involved. So like I like, and I'm also, I'm a Wisconsin guy, and I have a lot of ties to Badger football, and we do like the jump around. I think most people know what the jump around is, so there's a lot of things that people don't know. Like in the crowd, they'll play Sweet Caroline, and like they'll shut it off, and the rest of the crowd will sing it. My Little Buttercup, like the kids will sing it. So I like the sing along stuff. So it all depends, kind of like where I am and what the situation is. So it's a biggest cop-out answer, isn't it?
Say that your walk-on song is Little Buttercup? Is Janelle, is that what you heard?
I heard that too.
It might be.
Yeah.
Might be. Yeah. See, if it's like an MMA fight, I'm psyching out the other person with that. They're like, is that really what he's coming up to? Like, yeah. And
Janelle, what's yours?
Mine is Run DMC. It's Tricky. That's a good song.
That's the name of the song. I'm going to have to Google.
Isn't that Beastie Boys? It's not Run DMC. It's Beastie Boys.
It's Run DMC. It's Tricky.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm
just double checking. Yeah.
Trust me on this one.
Yeah, she knows.
I know my Run DMC.
Yeah. You're right. Okay. Because I thought it was changed. That changed from last time. But
no.
But
I do love Beastie Boys as well, but
that's me why I thought you were saying it had to be something Beastie Boys. But with that in mind, like we'll close up this particular show with thank you so much for being on. We like to try to keep it obviously a little light, at times heavy, because you're passionate about this, right? We know you're passionate about it based on all the different things you do for us. So on behalf of the fire service, thank you for doing that. Please keep doing that. And the whole point about you bringing forth, like, we can make this change. Look at smoking, look at seatbelts. To me, that is one of the most uplifting things we've heard, right? Like, yeah, we can do this. Yeah. And the fact that you started the Science Alliance, because there are so many people that are paying attention. So thank you for doing that. And then anything in that you want to include, like if someone wants to take something from this, like take this last little tidbit from Dr. Sara Jahnke about being better. What do you got?
Just don't give up. Like, it feels so overwhelming. Don't give up. Just keep going. And if you screw it up, start over again.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Because you run into that, right? Like sometimes funding, where's the funding coming? And it comes there, but it's because you don't give up on it. So, with that
For anyone who wants to join the Science Alliance, we have a log. We have it's science-alliance.org. And if you there's a link you can click to join, and if they just want to put ZAM as their code, then it will give them a membership. We're going to do a first free year membership for everyone.
Really? That's just awesome. Use ZAM, ZAM?
Yeah.
Well, you just made my day. That's awesome. And I'll leave you. This is one of the things that really motivates us to continually do the program. And again, I can't thank you enough for being on. And there's inspiration and there's knowledge all around us. And sometimes it's a little bit hard to find, right? Sometimes it's hard to really decipher how to use it. But don't give up using your message, and use it to be better every shift. So thanks for being here. And thank you all for listening.